Hi, my name's Mandy and welcome to my YouTube channel Picty Stitch. Life is so creative. Now this morning I was watching Michelle Sews again on YouTube and she'd started up a So Curious tag. It's a little bit similar to the one Holly Sews initiated, I think it was 3 or 4 years ago now. It was called the Seamstress tag. However, I never actually undertook that challenge, so I thought this would be a good segue for any new subscribers to find out a little bit more about me. So I've pinched a couple of questions from Holly's tag and incorporated them into Michelle's So Curious tag. Okay, so like I say, my name's Mandy and I live in the northwest of England. I live with my partner in a little village called Church Lawton. I've got 3 daughters and 6 grandchildren, so a lot of my time is taken up with sewing and knitting and crocheting for my grandchildren. There's other crafts I enjoy as well, so I like to knit, crochet. My main love is quilting, cross stitch, tapestry, rug making, and I also like to make scrapbooks and cards. So quite a lot of crafts, quite a lot of tackle and I've got a little bijou craft room, so there's a lot of vertical storage that goes on in this little room of mine. So I thought we'd start with how I come to sew first of all. Now my mum was always sewing. She made all my clothes as a child and my sisters and brothers. She also made clothes for herself, and I'm going to pop a picture up of her here now. She's actually, I think she was on holiday there. This is before I was born, either in Fleetwood or Blackpool. She's with my paternal grandfather there walking along. But my mum, she just loved to sew. That was her main thing. She could knit and she taught me to knit, but her main hobby was sewing. And even on in later life, she carried on. So I was very inspired by my mum, and a lot of my presents for birthdays and Christmas were also sewing related. For example, I used to get kits of stuffed toys to make. So yeah, I've always enjoyed crafts. I also, my mum also had 3 other sisters and they were all handy as well. My aunties used to like to sew, but one in particular, my auntie Beryl, she was actually a qualified seamstress and she worked in a very fancy shop for a very fancy clientele, and she used to make all the alterations. So it was like a posh clothes shop, should we say. When did I start sewing? Well, I could say I was 11. I was at boarding school and we used to, at boarding school for girls, sewing classes, okay, and Mrs. Stokes was our sewing teacher, I remember that, and it used to be a room and it would have all these sewing machines in, and they were the ones with the handle, and I think some had a treadle at the bottom as well, if I remember rightly. Perhaps some of the girls who I used to go to school will probably correct me. But the first thing we made was an apron, okay, so it had a bib and crossed over at the back, and we had to make it in our house colours, and my house was browning, so it was a yellow and white gingham, and then we had a white piece going across the bib, a white piece of fabric, and we had to chain stitch our name onto that piece of fabric. So that was the very first article I made. And then we had to, when we went home for holidays, we were told that we would have to choose a sewing pattern and we were going to make an A-line skirt. And this is the actual sewing pattern I used. And I sewed that skirt there. And I can remember it was in like a brush cottony fabric, but it wasn't as flimsy at that. It had more stability, and it was a browny russet coloured fabric. And when we hemmed the skirt up, we had to use a bias binding. So yeah, that was my first actual garment. And it had a zipper, and I don't think I put pockets on though, if I remember rightly. But there we go, that was the very first garment I made. So the next question is how long have you been sewing for? Well, I can safely say that you're going to guess my age here. I think it was about 47 years, so that sounds awful, doesn't it? So I think it was when I was about 20 that I started sewing in earnest again, making garments. We had a fabric shop which opened up in Alsager, which at the time I was living in Alsager, so that's like the next village to Church Lawton where I live now. Well, it was a village then, and a fabric shop opened up, and I used to enjoy going in the fabric shop and ordering patterns, choosing patterns and selecting the fabrics. And in fact, I can remember, there was no YouTube channel to show you how to go on. You just had to learn by yourself, really, and read books. That's how I learnt to sew my garments. And I can remember seeing, I used to love the Vogue patterns. And there was one particular dress what sticks out in my mind which I made, and it was an emerald green fabric, and it was a Christian Dior pattern, and I lost it, and I really wanted to make it again. I really loved this pattern, and I kept looking on Etsy and looking on eBay and looking in charity shops, and I could never find it. And sometimes there would be a seller selling it, but it would be abroad, and it was quite a lot for postage. And anyhow, one day, I think it was last year, I was browsing through eBay, and guess what? This lady called Stephanie was selling the pattern. And of course I snapped it up straight away. So this is still in the wrapper, I haven't had it out yet. It was a Vogue pattern. Doesn't that look like, it does remind me of is it Christy Brinkley? But this is the pattern. It was by Vogue. And when I think about it, I was a novice sewer. But just look at that detail. I can remember you had to cut out the pieces. And then you had to use it's like a pin tuck. These like little pin tucks. And then you sewed these pieces together to make the bodice. And I, of course, did that short version. I thought I was Uptown Girl in this. And I think I must have been, when I made this, I think I was about 22 or 23. I'd started making skirts and the odd blouse, but this was one of my first dresses. And I've managed to get the pattern. Now this is a size 14, because when they made patterns years ago, they only did a size specific. So you were either a size 12, you got a size 12 pattern. And they only went up, I think, to a 16 or 18. So there wasn't... Yeah, this one says it goes up to a 22, actually. But it was very rare you could get bigger patterns. But Stephanie, and we had a little chat on eBay through emailing, and I thought I'd just mention her because she was fantastic. Yeah, so I've managed to get my old Vogue pattern again, and I can't wait to make this dress again because I think it's a beautiful dress. So I just thought I'd mention that. So I've been sewing for quite a long time, I'd say. Now, the next question is the worst garment I ever made, and I can quite categorically say I know what my worst garment was. So when I was sewing, like I say, I was going into this fabric shop and, you know, making all these different garments, and I decided I was going to make a jacket. Now, in the 80s, jackets were very boxy, and I picked this pattern out and I bought this boiled wool, and it was like a purpley colour. There wasn't much of a choice for wool. In fact, you see, you didn't have online shops. But I made this purple jacket. Now, of course, you know, now if I made a jacket, you know, you've got all the YouTube tutorials and they're showing you how to use a clapper and, you know, how to press your seams. Well, you see, me, I just got this wool and I cut it out and made this boxy jacket, and I put these shoulder pads in. Well, you can imagine in the 80s what the shoulder pads were like, and it was awful. The wool looked all, it just didn't, it wasn't crisp at all. And I can remember walking downstairs and my friend come, we were going out somewhere, and the face just said it all. It was like, so I never wore that jacket again. So that was the worst garment I've ever made. It was an epic fail. So the next question is which garment are you most proud of? And that's easy. It was my granddaughter's prom dress. I was so stressed making this prom dress. I wanted the top of this, okay, and that section of this dress here. So yeah, that was quite stressful for me. So I made a toile first of all, and she came up, she tried it on, she liked it, but it was a little bit too big. So this is the top of the dress. Once it was boned and constructed, I then hand sewed the lace actually to the bodice and prick stitched the zip in. This is the bottom of the dress, and as you can see, I've cut layers of tulle out and attached it to the bottom of the dress. And here she is with my son-in-law, her dad. I really should have done a vlog on the making of this dress, but at the time I worked full time and I just didn't have time, unfortunately. But that would have been great if I'd have done a vlog on that. You know, the stages. It's a real regret of mine I didn't do that. But that was my proudest make, and she, you know, she looked absolutely fantastic in it. I was so proud of her. So how big is my fabric stash? It's huge, absolutely huge. It's fact, it's overwhelming. And I'll pop a card up, or I'll perhaps link a video at the end. It was called Show Us Your Fabric Stash. So you can see my fabric stash on there, but it is huge. And it's all neatly packed away. And I use the IKEA drawer sorters for all my fat quarters for my quilting. But yeah, it is quite overwhelming the amount of fabric I have. Yeah. My daughter's eyes when they come in my craft room, they're just like, mother. So yeah, so it's a big stash. Right, most used pattern. Well, my most used pattern, I can safely say, is the Freya top by Tilly and the Buttons from the stretch book. In fact, this is the Freya dress actually I'm wearing today. So yeah, I would easily say it's the Freya top. How big is my pattern stash? So you might see this box here. So that's all my patterns in there. I've got some in a drawer as well, and these are all my other patterns in this box. So I've got quite a lot of patterns, but a lot of these are, if I turn it round, oh sorry if I made the microphone crackle. A lot of these are my mum's patterns, okay, and I don't know why. I mean, she was very thrifty, was mum. But here it says culotte petticoat, so that's obviously culotte petticoat. That was obviously a pattern she's made for a petticoat, and she stored them in old tight packets, chiffon tight. Oh, she must have been one for chiffon. And I know I can't really bear to chuck those away. This one's called the Brain Dress. So a lot of her patterns. It would be interesting to see sun frock, cotton. Yeah, what they turn out like if I made them up. Those will be my tight packet, barely black. But yeah, a lot of these are her, like I say, her old patterns. But I've also got other patterns, what a PDF. If they're a coat pattern, I store them in a plastic box underneath my bed, because I don't like getting them creased. Oh, I use these as well. So this is the gable top. This idea I got from Jane from Loopy Mabel, and if you go onto her YouTube vlog, she actually has a coupon code which you can use to get these envelopes. Okay, so, and they've got a gusset in, so they're quite roomy, but I don't peel off that sticker there, so I can use it again. I just tuck it in, so, and I just write on what it is. I don't put any pictures on or anything, so I'm too mean to use my printer. So I use the IKEA Calyx unit, and one of the shelves, what you can put in the Calyx unit is full of these patterns. So if you go on Loopy Mabel vlog, I'll put a link in below, you can get a discount code. So that's how I store all my patterns. But to be honest, I'm not buying a lot of patterns. Organising patterns, like I say, anything what's long, like a coat, if it's a PDF one, they go in a plastic long box under my bed. Usually I'm a little bit more organised, so I'll have all my skirts at the front, blouses, so I can do it that way. I don't go by company name, I go by the garment where possible, so that's how I organise. Now, the last question is, do I prefer PDF or paper? And I'll say straight away it's paper patterns, the tissue. Paper patterns, to me, a PDF is just something easily accessible and quick if you want it that night. And that's the only beauty I can see in them. I'll say the other thing is that if it's an itch to stitch pattern, say, you can just print out the one size, which is useful. Some patterns don't always do that, and you got lots of layers, but that's another use of them, because some paper patterns, sometimes the lines run into one another and they can be a little bit confusing for me, because my eyesight's not fantastic. So that's the only other reason I may go to a PDF if I want to see a clear line drawing. Paper patterns to me are less faff, and I can't see any savings by using PDF, because you're using printer's ink, you're using paper, and forever running out of ink, and it's costly to keep on putting ink in the printer. So to me, The paper patterns are the best to go by. So there we go. That's my So Curious tag. I hope I haven't bored you too much. And yeah, I've enjoyed doing this. So thank you, Michelle. And I'll see you next week when I do my February roundup. Bye.